Join us today as we share videos from the vault, special presentations, past interviews, and share with you the A.R.E. through the ages.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our presentation tonight. I'm Joy Scott. This is Pat Belisle. We're both presenting to you on the subject of achieving oneness in divisive times, bringing your inner world into the real world. I've been an A.R.E. member for a long time, and I'm currently the coordinator in LA for the A.R.E. And we all know that today can be kind of a little bit frightening. A lot of change going on, a lot of tumult, and we might respond to that with fear, with anger, but ultimately what we want to inspire you tonight is to face our world and the future with hope and a sense of empowerment of how we can use our spiritual creativity and our actions to create the kind of world we want. This is a journey that I went on recently. I did a lot of journaling, and out of that came a book called Magenta Nation about how we can bring our country together. Some of those principles are in that book, and we're going to experience some of them today. But first, I wanted to mention that if you have questions, please submit them through the chat function. We will be doing Q&A at the end. You do have a handout for the workshop part of this event. And you're on mute, but we can get your questions, as I say, and your comments through the chat function. So now I'd like to introduce Pat, who I just discovered something new. He's also, in addition to his many other accomplishments, been a rock and roll singer. Doesn't he look the part? Now, he is Director of Philanthropy for the A.R.E. You might know him in that role. You might also not know that he is also a mystic and a seeker, has traveled the world in his own spiritual search for God, been involved with the A.R.E. since 1995 and been a longtime counselor at the A.R.E. camp. He presents often for the A.R.E. I've had the privilege of being part of his presentations. He's wonderful, warm, witty, and inspiring. So for the first part of this time we have together, take it away, Pat.
Wow, I should stop while I'm ahead. Thank you, Joy. I sound fantastic. Thank you. You're very sweet. And the truth is that we would not be here tonight without you and your leadership getting us here, because this topic is near and dear to your heart. And for those of you who are A.R.E. members, I'll also let you know that Joy wrote a wonderful article in this current Venture Inward magazine, our member magazine. So please check out her magazine, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your book and some of the exercises from there. The last thing I'll point out before I jump into mine is that the folks at home there have a handout that's accessible to them that hopefully they've printed up and that they can use, but have some pen or pencil nearby to jot some things down and do some work with us. All right, well, I'm really excited to be here and really happy to share with you some of the things that I've worked up and that Joy has worked up. And I think I'm sharing my screen now. There we go. Excellent. So, as Joy said, we are here tonight to talk about achieving oneness in divisive times. And the idea of bringing your inner world into the real world was something that I learned at A.R.E. camp, where the kids always came together in the summertime and just experienced so much love and connection and peace in nature. And they always talked about hating to go back out into the real world. And one of the things we tried to convey to them was that this is the real world. This connection, this oneness can be the real world. It's just up to you to keep it internal and bring it back out into that external world and help create that world into your real world with this rich sense of connection and love. So that said, most of you know that at any A.R.E. function, we like to start with a little quiet time, maybe a little short meditation. So I'm going to invite you to go ahead and close your eyes and just sit comfortably for just a minute and just let any thoughts drift off into space. Take a nice deep breath. Just feel yourself releasing any tension, knowing that you are safe, protected. Just imagine a glowing light around you, a protective white light. Just know that all is well, right here, right now. No thoughts, no worries. Just become aware of the room around you now, any sounds or smells. Just present right here, right now. And just feel yourself beginning to dissolve as you breathe in that beautiful white light. Just feel your essence of who you are, that pure love, melt into that white light until you and the white light are one. And you expand that white light that is you into the space that you're in right now, and then out into your neighborhood, filling everyone in that space, everything in that space with love and light. Just allowing that light to expand to your entire state, and then our entire country, until the light expands all the way around the world, engulfs the world with love and light. You are connected. You are at one. Then I'm going to invite you to go ahead and open your eyes and just try to stay in that sense of oneness as you watch the earth go around. It's a little harder to stay in the oneness as someone is using words to talk at you, and now your senses are picking up on the sight in front of you. Slowly your mind creeps back in, and I want you to be conscious of that, because what we're going to get at here is what divides us. Because not only have I started to divide you by using words, and your senses divide us by labeling the things around you, but just imagine what happens next when we go out into that other world and we turn on our televisions and we start hanging out with other people and looking at our Facebook. Are you still able to keep that sense of oneness now, looking at that screen? I tried to put something for everyone to push a button. Not to be mean, but just to make you aware that your focus was on oneness and love just moments ago, until I snuck up on you and tricked you into being divided again. Whether it's war or politics, race, immigration, COVID, anything that might be on your mind these days, those are the things that end up dividing us. And we're going to try to give you some tools here to overcome that division and fear and separateness, and bring you back into that state of oneness. One of the things that I've become really aware of in the last 6 or 8 months especially, but even longer than that, is that we are in what I'm calling the era of Kali. Maybe some of you know this Hindu goddess, who is both the goddess of destruction and, get this, also rebirth. So yes, she has all those swords that come in and divide us and destroy things. She destroys the old, let's say, all the structures, whether it's politics or education or race or gender, whatever it is that she comes in and washes away, just like some of the fire, the wildfires that have been out in Joy's area out in California, or the hurricanes that have come through the East Coast over here. Those things come through and they destroy. It's true, they wipe everything away. But guess what happens afterwards? Just like with Kali, they make way for regeneration, for rebirth. And I'm really convinced that this is the period that we're all in right now, that Kali is here, wiping away the old and just about to bring in the new. Of course, all of us who have been watching for the age of Aquarius, we know that's where we are right now, on the cusp of that. So just, again, for your own awareness, I want you to focus on what really divides us. And the answer is right there. It's our own minds, our ego selves. Once we start using words, for instance, we divide. Paramahansa Yogananda, who started the Self-Realization Fellowship, talked about how much he loved being in his guru's presence, and that words were superfluous because they communicated so beautifully their love just by being with each other, that when words were brought into it, it just didn't suffice, let's say. It started to divide. You can think of a person that you love in your own life. You just love being in their presence, but sometimes they use words, or they bring up ideas that all of a sudden make you feel separate from them. Are you kidding me? That's so stupid. Why would you say such a thing? All of a sudden, there's this idea of you versus me, or us versus them, that separateness. But time and again, Edgar Cayce tells us that is just illusion. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Now, in Cayce's worldview, of course, the Creator created this third dimensional plane as a way for us to learn through time and space, that we need to focus on love and patience and really put our ideal out into the world. The more we live from our ideal, the closer we're going to be to God and to feeling that oneness. So that's all what divides us. But again, the truth is, no, we are all just one. If our egos, doggone it, would just get out of the way. So Joy mentioned that not only am I a fundraiser, I'm also a mystic. How many people say that, right? It's true. My wife and I took 1 year to travel around the world back in 93, 94. And it's because we were looking for meaning in life and what it's all about. And I had this mystical experience at the Osho commune in India, where my ego, myself, my personality dissolved and went away, and this bluish purple light washed in, and just this total sense of unconditional love and oneness. And even though I wasn't there anymore, I could see everything in the room around me there, and I just knew that everything was exactly as it should be. And this thing I mentioned here, that this universe is just a useful illusion created for our own learning, that was reality in that space. I knew that it didn't matter if I was king of the world, or if I was in prison or on the street. Everything is exactly as it should be, and everything is here to provide a lab, let's say, to teach people whatever they need to learn as a soul, as a spirit. So there you go. Oh yeah, so before I get to that next slide, I was going to mention that after that mystical experience of mine, I knew the secret was that we just have to be ourselves. That's all that's expected of us here on this, in this plane. Just be ourselves. We don't even have to do anything to be a perfect creation of God. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go sit, in the woods somewhere and just be the rest of my life. And then came Edgar Cayce, who said, no, no, no. In this world, you actually have to do something, and something ideally that's in line with your spiritual ideal. something you want to manifest in the world, just even a step or two. You have to do something. So there's a lot of Cayce readings that expound on that. So if you want to look for some of those, do that. I looked for one that was especially relevant to what's happening in the world today in terms of human affairs. So this is one of the readings that I found that says, what are we to do about racial hatreds? The reading says, then mentally, spiritually do something about those races that are misunderstood or who have been neglected here or there. Now, I will say that back in Cayce's day, 100 years ago, they talked about nationalities as races as well as just what we think of them today based on, points of origin or skin color. There was the Italian race and the Irish race and the German race, as well as African and Asian, etc. So, but the point here is, if you see a problem, a race that's been misunderstood or neglected, go out and do something. It's on us to take some action that's in line with our spiritual ideal. That's where I love this depiction of yin and yang. It's part of our daily life that we have to both take action, but then also sit back and be receptive and wait. So act and then wait. I always tell people that fundraising is a perfect example of that. And maybe it's why I got into it. I have to ask, right? Jesus said, ask and ye shall receive, but that's both parts of it. Ask, that's the masculine, and then receive, you will receive, is the feminine. So yes, you have to act in the world, and you have to stay open and patient, because action does create karma, and karma does come back to you, as we know through the Cayce readings. But so the bottom line with all of it is you have to act from your highest place. And that's where we're headed tonight, to talk about some spiritual ideals. Just so you know, the earth will take care of herself, regardless of whether we humans figured out how to get along before we destroy her or not. She's going to be just fine, honestly. According to Edgar Cayce, of course, we are souls. We are immortal. Our bodies are not, but our souls are. And he says between lifetimes, we have other dimensions to explore. So again, why do we fight? Why do we worry? It's all going to work out. That's the good news in the Edgar Cayce readings. We all reunite with the Creator in the end. It's just in this school of Earth, we have choice. So why don't we focus on peace? Why don't we focus on love? Why don't we focus on connection? Well, I'm going to give you in the next couple slides here a way to start thinking about and changing your perception. So check this one out. Read the top part first, please, and then look at the picture. And then once you've seen the picture, look at the bottom and read the bottom, and then look back at the picture again. Now, I can't see you, but I know when I did that, it's like, wait a second, what? How did it go from being flipped upside down to being flipped upside right? And the answer is because they told you to, and you believed it. At least I did. I hope it worked for you. When I believed they were upside down, I saw them as upside down. And then when they told me at least one would be upside right, all of a sudden they were all upside right. I couldn't believe it. So I thought I'd use this tonight as an example of what you focus on, and what you're told to focus on is what you believe and what you see. So really the lesson is, don't believe just what you're told, even if you experience it through your own senses. So I'm going to play some games with you here for just a minute about your perceptions and what you're told to believe or focus on. So for instance, what if I told you this woman was Osama bin Laden's mother? I want you to pay attention to your thoughts and feelings as you think of what it might be like to have been Osama bin Laden's mother, what you project onto her, what you think. And then now notice what it feels like when I tell you that this is actually Shireen Ebadi, who is a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, that's the same woman, not at all Osama's mother. How did that feel to change your perception like that? It's only your own mind that made you feel one way or the other. Same with this one. Try this one on now. What if I tell you to focus on the worldwide coronavirus cases in 2020? Look at the chart. It is going up and up and up. Are you scared yet? Do you feel like you're in danger? Do you want to lock your door and run away? All right, that's your mind. Look at the next one. What if I told you, and this is true, that the number of weekly deaths on average in the US from all causes is actually a little lower right now than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. Some of those bumps back there are from a bad flu season in the winter of 2017 and 18. We had a lot of deaths. So again, what you focus your mind on, what you choose to believe, causes you to react. What if I told you to focus on the impact of terrorism around the world? Look at all those dark spots where terrorism is happening. That's one way to think of it. But this is also true. Check this out. The number of worldwide battle deaths per 100,000 people is at its lowest point in recorded history. It's true. Fewer people are dying today from warfare, at least, than ever before since we started keeping track of it. We perfected killing each other in World War II. And ever since then, it's been going down and down and down. So why aren't we focusing on this? I'll tell you what's gotten better. The media has gotten better at reporting every death, right? Every terrorist bomb, every person that dies from the flu or coronavirus. So it's really up to us what we focus on and where we're getting our information. Because if we're told to focus on China or Russia or North Korea, our heart starts racing a little bit and we start feeling that fear. But the truth is, we're all human beings living this precious gift of life right here on earth together. If we can just keep that in mind, keep coming back to that idea of oneness. Just take a nice deep breath. Just feel more at peace. So here's the bottom line of this section. What you choose to focus on will grow. Do you want to focus on love and oneness and connection, constructive things, or do you want to spend your time on worry, self-doubt, guilt, anxiety? Because there's a lot of folks out there who are willing to feed you that if you want to eat it. A lot of our folks talk about it that way, talk about media diet, you know, what you're eating in terms of media. And how conscious you are about what you focus on. I'm just going to be encouraging you to be more and more conscious of what you're feeding yourself. Here's an example of something else you can feed yourself. Peace in the world must begin first with your heart and purpose and mind. Every individual. You can't expect world peace without having individual peace. So that's where it starts, in you. That's why we love our meditation and all these peaceful activities around the A.R.E. Same thing with A Course in Miracles. For those of you who are fans of the Course, it is from your peace of mind that a peaceful perception of the world arises. Think about that. Choose peace. Who are you going to hang out with today? Are they going to bring you toward peace or away from peace? What are you going to do in your work today? Are you going to take the bait on Facebook and get that person, let them know they're wrong? I've fallen for it. Believe me, I have. So many people often ask, do you want to be right or happy? The Course in Miracles says, do you want to be right or choose peace? So you can always choose in every moment. Just keep it in mind. It's a choice. All right. Well, love does win in the end because we are one. Here's one of the Edgar Cayce readings that reminds us. More wars, more bloodshed have been shed over racial and religious differences than over any other problem. These two must go the way of the others. Mankind must learn, if he or she will know peace as promised by him, that is the Christ, of course, that God loves you, whether you be called of this one sect or schism or ism or cult, the Lord is one. So whether you're Catholics or Baptists or Hindus or Buddhists or isms or schisms or whatever, it's all about love in the end. So let's not get sucked into the wars around races and religion. Nikola Tesla reminded us of that same thing. The Buddhists express it one way, the Christians and the Hindus another way, but it all comes down to the same thing. We are all one. Thank you, Mr. Tesla. I love your cars. Speaking of oneness, let's talk about that now. This is very deep in the Cayce readings, as most of you know. Whoever ever picked up a Cayce reading, you'll know it's all about oneness. And here is one of my favorite readings because it hands you the meaning of life. I wouldn't have had to take my trip around the world if I would have known Edgar Cayce before our trip, because he hands it to you right here. The purpose of life is to know yourself, to be yourself, and yet one with the Creator. Just like a raindrop, you feel like you're separate, and maybe you are for some time, but really it's just a matter of time before you fall back into that river which runs back to the ocean, and you're all one with the Creator. But it's good to know yourself and be yourself first before reuniting. This is a reading that Cayce gave when they were putting together Atlantic University, which of course still is with us with master's degrees. I hope you check it out. But anyway, here's a lesson. What should we study, Mr. Cayce? What's the most important lesson? The first lesson for 6 months. Can you imagine? Oneness this way, oneness that way, of God, of relationships, of purpose, oneness everywhere, oneness. 6 months, wow. Chief Seattle knew it as well. All things are connected. Just all of us on earth, we have the same blood, which Edgar Cayce talks about as spirit is the life. So we are all connected by that life force. Yeah, so we are all one, as it says here with this gentleman. Gentleman, he's a gentle one. I just wanted to take a quick minute and try to describe Edgar Cayce's idea of what is a spiritual ideal. I've brought it up a couple times. What is an ideal in Cayce's meaning? To me, an ideal is a North Star. It's a concept, the highest, best you can think of. So for some people, that's going to be truth or beauty or love. For some, it will be Jesus or Christ consciousness or Krishna or Buddha. It's different for everyone, but it's basically what you want to aspire to be, knowing that you'll never reach it. Cayce says, pick your spiritual ideal. Mine is love. And then sit with that, not just the word, but the feeling of your spiritual ideal. Meditate with that and attune to it so that after meditating on your ideal for some time, years maybe, you'll actually vibrate at the same rate of that feeling of truth or love or beauty or whatever it is that you're focusing on. So that is a spiritual ideal. Cayce says each person has it. Joy's going to talk more about the fact that each nation has an ideal, whether it's explicit or implicit, expressed or not, in other words. Lots of us have spiritual ideals which are very unconscious, but they're driving us nonetheless. So that's the part about know yourself. What really is in you that's driving you belief-wise? Where are you coming from? And what do you want to put out into the world? So here's a little helpful test to convey this just a little bit more using individuals. So jot down, if you will, just what principle does each of these people represent to you? When you look at Mother Teresa, you know about her service work in Calcutta mostly, but she was a servant for many, many years. What principle did that express to you? Was it love? Was it compassion? What was it? And same with Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. I know I've read his autobiography and know that he was all about truth. So to me, he's a seeker of truth, whether it was in political realms or diet or communal living. He did a lot of experiments. In fact, his biography was called Experiments in Truth. What about Abraham Lincoln? What does he mean to you? What principle, what single principle would you boil his lifetime down to? Is it honesty, right? Honest Abe. Was it unity, because he tried to keep the United States together as one? Was it resolve, because he stuck with a battle against all odds and seeing difficult violence all around him? What principle does each person represent? So once you've written that down, I'll also point out, just like I was starting to with Abe Lincoln, these people were not perfect people. They all did some pretty terrible things. Actually, I don't know if you know any of their biographies, but they were certainly not saints as we think of them traditionally. Abraham Lincoln, you probably know, is responsible for more American deaths than any other president, if you think of it that way, the Civil War. He also was responsible for hanging dozens of Native Americans in my home state of Minnesota as the Civil War was going on for some questionable causes. So, when you look beyond what we think of as their lifetime and what they exemplified overall in their life, you can absolutely find warts, bad things coming from each one of them. But the ideal, the spiritual ideal, is what we're focusing on here. And that's the overarching piece of this that we're going to get at. So here's the real test. You did that for these three, but now I want you to do it for these three. What principle does each of these people represent beyond the politics, beyond the nasty stuff? What do you feel was the guiding principle, the higher ideal of each of these three men, presidents of the United States? Just take a minute and write that down. Come on, you can do it. You can find something for everybody. A good one. All right. I'm going to let you off the hook for just one quick second, but we're going to come back to this. I'm going to give you a Cayce reading as you're thinking more about this. I love this reading. Hold those things which in your dealings with your fellow man, you may see only the pure, the good. For until you are able to see within the life and activities of those you have come to hate the most, something you would worship in your Creator, you haven't begun to think straight. You get that? Until you find something in all these people that you would worship in your Creator, you haven't begun to think straight. So try it again. Find something in each of these men that you would worship in your Creator. All right. I have confidence in you. And if you didn't get it now, watch your dreams tonight, as we say at the A.R.E, and maybe something will come to you tomorrow. But anyway, there you go. Good for you for trying. I hope you find your own spiritual ideal along these lines also, what you want to bring into the world. Before I leave the political scene too far, I just want to encourage you guys to read this book, which is written actually by a friend of mine. He's from Charlottesville, Virginia, where I live. Yes, that's Charlottesville. I live about 5 blocks away from the park where the white supremacists came and did their thing a few years ago. So I'm in the thick of it, no doubt about it. Really, I wore my Be the Love t-shirt down to the protests. But anyway, that's another story. This book, The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. He was a professor here at the University of Virginia. Now he's up at NYU in Manhattan. But he wrote this amazing book called The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And it is fascinating. If you really want insight into your friends and family members who drive you crazy with their whatever, conservative or religious or conservative or liberal viewpoints, read this book. It will help you find some common ground, guaranteed. Okay. So I'm going to turn it back over to Joy here in just a second. This is my last slide for now, and I look forward to some Q&A after Joy's presentation. But this is what it's all about for me. Even if we disagree about everything, we can still be kind to each other, right? Let's all agree to that. Let's all be kind and really stay open to what each of us is trying to bring into this world through our ideal. Okay? All right. Much love. Joy, are you there? Come on back in. I'm looking forward to hearing your piece. There she is.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. That was really profound.
Oh, you're nice to say.
Thank you very much.
You bet. See you soon.
See you soon. So we are going to be taking this a little deeper at this point in time. Pat set the stage so beautifully. Talking about ideals. We're going to be looking at how to set ideals for ourselves and the world in this part of the presentation. This is, I think, one of the most profound readings from Cayce, where he talks about all things material have their inception in the spiritual. They take form in the mind and then find expression in the material. I'm going to stay here for just a second. When I was younger, I had the opportunity to work with Bill and Gladys McGarry at the A.R.E. clinic. And the phrase, spirit is the life, mind is the builder, the physical is the result, was really the basis for healing and treating every patient, with the idea that, as Cayce would say, what do you want to be healed for? That healing is more than a physical process. It takes all three working in concert to effect true healing. And that's true about ourselves, and it's also true about the world around us. So we are in a very interesting situation right now. And a lot of us are fearful, worried, concerned. And Cayce was giving his readings during another time of tremendous world upheaval, where he said, when people ask him about world events, he said, these things have come about because the human family is reaching a point of reckoning. We need a point where we all agree that out of all this turmoil, we can come to agreement in the creative forces and in our interpretation of God to have a common basis upon which all may agree. We might reframe this and say, what he's saying here is that we need to have a common ideal that we can work towards if we're going to have harmony in the world, if we're going to get to that new age that we all want to see and experience. Now that's a big order. How could it be possible that the world could come to this common agreement? And he said, you're going to say this is impossible. But he said, what has caused the present conditions is this division, is this fragmentation of goals, of why we're here. And he said the reason that this is occurring is, and he frames it in this story from the Bible with Cain and Abel, people are asking, where is thy brother? God is asking that. And the world, a big part of it is saying, am I my brother's keeper? Not my problem, in other words. And he's saying the world as a world that makes for disruption, the discontent, has lost its ideal because we do not accept responsibility for, that we have the responsibility for caring for our brother as well as ourselves. And finally, just one more reading about the world events. He pointed out that nations have karma and we can change it. In a question specifically about America, is America fulfilling her destiny? That rather we should ask, are individuals fulfilling their own destiny and applying the knowledge that we know, that they know, to fulfill our divine purpose? For each and every one, each and every nation is led, and what we see in the earth is a pattern of that of the mind and a shadow of spiritual truth. In other words, it's the same for nations, it's the same for the world as it is for individuals. As we have a spiritual ideal and act in accord with that, we will see unity or division. Whoops. We just had an event here in LA with Stephen Schwartz, who is one of the foremost scholars who has studied this relationship between spirit and mind and the material world. And I want to talk more about what he shared with us in a minute. But there is now, as we know, science is catching up to what Edgar Cayce had said a couple generations ago. And in one of those areas, it is that precept about spirit is the life, mind is the builder, the physical is the result. There have now been enough experiments and publications within the scientific community demonstrating that, for example, meditation can help stop wars and end violence. Thoughts change the composition of water. Thoughts and emotion influence plants. And I found fascinating this research published from Princeton that data, random computer information that was being generated on 9/11 began to form itself into a pattern as people had this mass common experience. It actually influenced the physical world. And more science is showing that. And what we saw, what we heard when we met with Stephen last week was more about history and as well as science, and how a few people gathering together and working together truly changed the world. That nonviolent movements succeed 75% of the time, violence only 25% of the time. That small groups like the Quakers, who helped to start the abolitionist movement and gain the vote for women, are good examples of this. Only 10% of people are needed to make change in order to change culture. And we have seen this time and time again in our own country and in world movements. So we're powerful. And often we don't use that power. We do not have the intentionality harnessed to make the changes that we want to see. So here's the roadmap for how we can use the spiritual power that we have to consciously create the world we want. First of all, we know that the chaos that we might be seeing is a reflection of spiritual and mental forces being misapplied, and in particular, an insensitivity to the well-being of our fellow humans. As Pat was saying, it's not just enough that we meditate and become enlightened. We've got to put that to use in terms of creating and working for justice in our world. We can change the course of events if we know what we want and we focus on that and we do it together, even in a small group. Our attitudes and thoughts influence our external reality. And we know nations and cultures, like humans, are ruled by the laws of karma and grace. So whatever negative karma that we might have created as a society can be mitigated by the application of grace. And just a few who are united in that intent, spiritual, mental, and physical, can change the world. So I hope you're feeling optimistic at this point in time, because we want to now move into an exercise showing us how we can actually do this. What we're going to do is the Cayce process for creating our ideal, and put that to work to create an ideal for the world that we want to see, the world that we want to build. So here's where your handout comes into play. You got a bullseye, something that looks like this, and we're going to focus on the inner circle right now, the little small one, and think about what kind of spiritual concept that you would like to see manifest in the world in order to create your ideal world. And Pat said his ideal was love. Mine has been faith for a while, and I think it's shifting a bit more towards the justice area. It could be a fruit of the spirit that you see that you want to have manifest. It could be compassion. It could be any spiritual quality that you think is really at the basis for creating the kind of world that we want. So if you could think about that for a minute, and then write that quality in the center. And you may want to give this more thought later, but for purposes of the exercise, pick the one that seems most likely right now. Now we move on to the next circle, and these are the qualities of mind. Let's assume that your spiritual ideal is compassion. If that ideal is manifested in the world, what kinds of attitudes are we going to have? What kind of thoughts do we have for one another? What kind of relationships that we might have with one another? We might say a quality of that mind might be fairness, or it might be consideration, a mental quality of creativity, or cooperation. There are a lot of mental qualities, and you can pick more than one. But think about, again, your spiritual ideal is manifested in the world, and this is how the mental attributes of that spiritual quality are expressed. So if you could write those in, just a couple, and again, you can think more about this later. And now we come to the biggest part of the circle, the physical manifestation. When your spiritual ideal is expressed through the mind of everyone in your ideal world, what does the world look like? What's it going to be like? Maybe it's that nature is in balance. Maybe it's that we all take care of each other, so no one has want or is lonely or abandoned. It might be justice, that everyone is treated fairly, that nations collaborate to solve all the problems on a global level and not just on an individual basis. There could be many manifestations here, both at the community level, at the city, state, national, and again, global level. So now you have several observations about how the earth is different, how our world is different, with the spiritual ideal lived by, the mental attitudes in accord with the spiritual ideal, and then the physical manifestation of that oneness, of that unity that we've been talking about. So what are we going to do with this? Well, the second part of this exercise, this is one example of how to create your prayer for the world. And here's where the intentionality comes in, to be able to express this on a continual basis, and with other people as well, to have it become more and more manifest in reality. So here's how you can use, this is one example of a prayer where compassion rules the hearts and minds of every citizen on planet Earth, where fairness, cooperation, and respect are universally expressed toward all humans all living things, all nature, all aspects of our planet. And where the outward manifestation of this spiritual and mental ideal leads us and results in a world in which people are respected and supported. Human activity is in harmony with nature. We all work cooperatively to share resources. This or something better, Lord, we ask in your name, and thank you for the manifestation of your perfect world. Now, you can create your own prayer. This is just an example of how you can use what we just defined in this ideals exercise to make this vision very specific. And that's what we want, is specificity, so that as we're putting this out there into the universe, it's having an effect. So how do you use it? Well, hopefully you have a daily period of prayer and meditation, and you could use it every day in that time, especially during the day when you might be fearful, discouraged, or angry. As the saying goes, why worry when you can pray? When we're tempted to ruminate and i.e. worry, we sometimes have a lot of things going on in our head that might be negative. Pluck that out like a weed and replace it with this flower of positive prayer. There's also a lot of time to be thinking about this if you consider how many times your mind is idle and you're not really doing a whole lot. You're sitting in traffic, you're waiting for the computer to boot up or the water to boil or a meeting to start. You're doing things that are usually rote, like housework, grooming, etc. Sitting at the beauty shop is one of my favorite times to do this. There's a lot of time that we could be using our minds constructively to creating the world we want. And also post it in places where you'll see it and be reminded to say it. I have it in my office. I have it taped on the mirror where I get ready in the morning. So it's a constant reminder to focus the mind creatively in this way. And our goal, we want to create a spiritual army that's actively creating our future. If this group of people who are on this event tonight, on this program, listening to us, if we all did this, that's that army. You can share it with your friends, you can share it with your study group, you can share it with your family, but even that small group is the core of this major, major shift that can and will take place. And finally, sometimes, especially when I talk to younger people, they can feel a bit overwhelmed by all of this. And what does it matter, what one person does? Like I mentioned, Stephen Schwartz, and he has what he calls the quotidian effect, where, if we all every day make the right choices and bringing in what we're saying here, think the right thoughts, pray the prayers, we are those seeds of change. And I think of it as a scale. Every good act, every good thought that we do, every little gesture of service, even smiling at somebody who looks a little down, petting the dog who wants attention, it goes on this scale of justice, like a grain of sand. And as every little action is put on this scale of justice, it becomes weighted more and more and more towards the side of justice and rightness. So if we think about that, it's like every single day we're putting our own actions, right thoughts onto the scale. And that's very, very important. And we all have a role. We all have a part to do here. Finally, some resources. The Edgar Cayce's A.R.E. clearly, the study group program is phenomenal for spiritual growth and for having groups working together to move our consciousness forward. And Pat, thank you. You mentioned the article that's in Venture Inward this month or this season that I wrote that has more exercises to conduct, and the book Magenta Nation that just came out that I wrote. And interestingly, what Pat was saying about people that may not get along or may be very different, at heart, we tend to have the same values. And it is important to recognize and get to the root of those values and agree on them. Again, the ideal. And then we can look at how we work together to make them real. So that's what this is really a workbook in how to do that. And then, of course, the A.R.E, the remote programs that exist throughout that the A.R.E has been able to put in place are phenomenon. So there's really some good resources here to help you move forward. And finally, we wanted to leave you thinking about this. Be glad you have the opportunity to be alive at this time and be part of that preparation for the coming influences of a spiritual nature that must rule the world. It's inevitable. We signed up for it. We're here now. We have a purpose. We have a role. So we should be glad of it and give thanks daily for this opportunity. So with that, we will have some time for questions and answers. We will bring Pat back up here. There he is. Welcome back.
Hi, that was great, Joy. Thank you for.
And we have some questions in the chat room. Pat, can you speak? Make sure you're not muted?
I can speak. Can you hear me? Can you not hear me?
I think you are muted.
Am I? Not on my side. I'll leave that to my technical people. I'm going to unmute. Do it again. Can you hear me?
Let's see. You're still muted.
Huh. I can hear me. I don't know what to say.
It's the green button on the right side. I think you have to.
Oh, mine's green.
No?
Yeah.
Not working?
All right. She says I'm not muted, so you just can't hear me, but I'm good. Okay. So, yes, question number 1 for Pat and Joy. How do you change your perspective or shift your energy when you are stressed, sad, or mad? Looking for tools, please. Okay. So, for me personally, I do the 3 M's.
I'm not hearing you. I'm not sure about everybody else.
Yep, they can hear me. I'll tell Joy, they can hear me. Maybe you can tell her, Kara. Okay, so yes, I do the 3 M's. That's how I think of it. My dad worked for 3M, but not that company. Yeah, so I'm talking about music. I love music. Music changes the dynamics and the energy for me like nothing else. So I put on whatever, Elvis. We were talking about Elvis before, or classical, depending on what I'm doing. But that's a real tool for me. Meditation is another one. I changed that energy so well with and by the way, Joy, now I'm on this. I don't know what changed there. Anyway, meditation helps me so much to be able to step back from whatever I'm feeling and getting drawn into and see things more objectively. So I'm a big fan of meditation. So music, meditation, and then mixing is my 3rd one. And I'm not talking about mixed drinks. I'm talking about socializing. I am what's called an extrovert, and I get energy from hanging out with other people. And so that's the 3rd thing I do. And it's hard, of course, during COVID times, but my wife and I have been doing a good job of doing social distance visits in our front yard, or taking walks at a distance with people, or whatever, just finding ways to connect with people. That really helps me change my energy. Those are my 3. Joy, do you have tools that you use to change your energy or change that from stress or sadness?
I'm sorry, I can hear you now, Pat. But we're good. Now I'm an introvert, so it's exactly the opposite. So I do well with withdrawing and being quiet, and finding inspiration in art and different types of television shows, movies. Film has always been a real transformational experience for me, and reading as well, and walking being in nature is incredible. I just rediscovered the joys of bike riding with this pandemic going on.
Well, excellent.
Hadn't been on a
I've
bike
been fishing. I've been fishing for that same reason, just to get out in nature. I should have mentioned that as part of meditation, walking in nature, being in nature. Yeah, nothing like it.
And there's such and going back to that scale, I think of that scale of justice. I think of that a lot. That sometimes when it feels like, is this doing any good? I think, yeah, it is. Sometimes it's like a plant, we don't see it growing, and then all of a sudden it pops up. So I find that very encouraging. And speaking of plants, doing gardening is something else that is extremely nurturing.
Yeah.
For me.
Edgar would be proud. He was a big gardener, as you probably know. Mr. Cayce had a big garden himself, so well done. Yeah, and every time, I have to say, every time you talk about justice, Joy, Dr. King's quote comes back to me, and I won't be able to quote it verbatim, but it was, the moral universe, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I love that. That same idea that Mr. Cayce, yeah, exactly. We eventually get there. Just like Mr. Cayce says, we all eventually reunite with the Creator. Just if you see the long enough time horizon, just be patient with each other and love each other best you can. Small steps. You don't have to, you'll get there eventually.
Yes. And by taking those small steps, we're making it happen faster.
Yeah, here. Looks like question number 2 is for you, Joy. Can you see that already? It says, Joy, what if we are too busy to be actively giving service?
Okay. I see it. And as I was working on the book, I thought a lot about that. There's a lot of things we can do, but then there's many people who simply don't have the time to be actively out, working for social justice, or doing a lot of things in the external world. I mean, there's grandparents raising grandchildren, and people working 2 or 3 jobs, and now, of course, we're all trying to kind of stay inside. But the one thing that we can all do is the prayer and the meditation. And if we do one thing, if we can keep that focused prayer handy and be doing that, that is a big grain of sand. In fact, that's a little pebble that's going on that scale of justice. So we can all be doing that. And also, as we are living inside a little more, we're learning to reach out and touch people in remote ways, telephone, Zoom meetings, and practicing giving service to people in those meetings by a positive, constructive attitude, support and understanding when other people are troubled. Those are all things that we can still do, maybe not in person as much, but in a different form.
Oh, I love that, Joy. That's so useful and helpful, and it's true. Service, a lot of times people think being of service has to be change the world. No, being of service just means being outside yourself and thinking about somebody else's needs. So I loved your examples, during COVID times especially. I've been texting or calling single friends of mine. I do not take it for granted that I have a loving partner who lives with me. And if I need a hug, I can get a hug or whatever. But I have a lot of single friends and elderly friends who don't have that luxury. And so I like to just check in on them when I think to do it and when I can, and make sure they're doing okay, because even that is an act of service. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
That is so very true, especially now, because it is tough, being alone and in a house with nobody else. And I'm lucky that I have family members that I'm with. But reaching out and making those touches are that may be the service.
It's true. Speaking of which, and I see there's question number 3. This one's for me, but before I do that, you mentioned touches. I heard from some of my single friends that they sometimes hug themselves just to get that touch. And apparently that same thing, just like taking a deep breath, releases endorphins and chemicals in your body that,
Yes.
So maybe I'll give yourself a big hug right now and give yourself some love.
Yes, that's a good one. And also breathing. I mean, I don't know that we've touched on that, but, you know, especially if we're sitting in front of a computer or we're hunkered down, we can be breathing shallowly, and that creates anxiety.
Yeah.
So practicing calming, deep breaths, it's almost like eating properly. That's a very nurturing activity too.
I have a friend who sets her alarm every 15 minutes and stands up and takes a deep breath and sits back down just to change that energy and keep releasing, like you say. That's great. All right, question number 3. From Cayce's perspective, Pat, what's the difference between a goal and an ideal? What's the difference between values and an ideal? So let's see, between values and ideal, again, to me, it's what I get from the Cayce readings is values are what Joy was sort of talking about, is from the mind, whereas the ideal is that North Star that you'll never reach. So that is a hard distinction, because love can be, I suppose, both a value and an ideal, for instance. But in terms of what was the first part of that? Sorry, let me scoot back. Oh yeah, the difference between a goal and an ideal. That's an easy difference. A goal is something that you can attain. You know, I can go out and do 3 phone calls or 3 service projects or whatever it is. But the ideal behind those goals is love. So, and I'll never reach pure love. I just want to take individual steps toward love. So again, for me, with my ideal of love, I really do think about the relationships in my life and who is going to lead me toward love versus away from love. I think about my work. Before working for the A.R.E, I was raising money for the University of Virginia Children's Hospital. Pretty loving act, right? I mean, helping sick kids get better. But when I got the call from Kevin Tedeschi to come help the A.R.E, I walked into that door. Some of you have been to Virginia Beach, to the headquarters, and above the door it says, "Our purpose is to manifest the love of God and mankind." And I thought, if I'm really about love, and this organization's purpose is to manifest love, I need to take this step. Just one more step toward love. So it's that kind of thing. An ideal is like a touchstone that you can use to make choices throughout your day. Is this toward my ideal or away from my ideal? And you always just want to take that little step toward your ideal. The end. Joy, I don't know if you want to add to that or move to your next question, I see.
No, I think that's just very, very, very true, Pat. Just as the opportunities are presented to us, to measure them against what our ideal is.
Yeah.
And that is a way to make life decisions that can never steer us wrong.
It's true. Can I ask, what do you think? You've put a lot of thought into this ideal of a nation. Do you feel like the United States has an ideal that you can put your finger on? Is it conscious, unconscious? What do you
I do. I think it was expressed by the founding fathers: liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
That was the ideal and it was so revolutionary at the time, where, you know, someone's life was determined by what class you were born into.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that everybody had the same rights, everyone had the right to pursue happiness, and should have the freedom to do so, was just revolutionary for that time.
That's so great. And I love that. If we could just all hold on to that and recognize that whatever political schism that's out there right now, or humanitarian schism, that people are looking toward that ideal, liberty and justice for all. If I'm a black man, for instance, which I'm obviously not, if I were a black man, I would have reason to not feel like I'm getting liberty and justice in some cases, right? Or a woman, or whatever. Pick your group. So they're all working toward that ideal, and sometimes it is bumpy or painful or whatever. But you got to give them credit for trying to move in that direction of liberty and justice for all. I love that.
And it is an evolution. I mean, at the time, it was liberty and justice for white men who owned property.
Right.
And that concept is, of course, much broader now, although, we may not be fulfilling it completely.
Oh, of course
But
not.
it
No.
is something to be working towards, and that's the lodestar. If we keep that in mind, again, it guides us. It gives us a criteria by which to make decisions and evaluate how we're doing.
That really is hopeful, Joy, because really when you look at it, 200 years ago, we still had slaves in this country. 100 years ago, women still didn't have the vote.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've made progress and progress and progress, even though we're still a ways from that North Star. We're moving in that direction. When you can look at it again with that long arc, bending toward justice, that's awesome.
Yes. And each one of us has the responsibility to help us move along that arc.
Hear, hear. One step at a time.
Mm-hmm. There's another question asking about tell us more about how science is demonstrating that our thoughts create reality. I gave a couple examples in the presentation, along with the concept that we now understand. Consciousness is now considered to be non-local. And when I heard that, I thought, what the heck does that mean? But it means that consciousness is not just in our brain, or they used to think it was maybe in the heart or the liver or some part of the body, but it is around us. It permeates everything. And therefore, when we talk about experiments that have been done where people have focused on water and thought positive thoughts, and the crystals change in a harmonious pattern, and then others think negative thoughts around water, and the crystals become not harmonious. Those are things that are really telling us the relationship between our consciousness and our attitudes, and the physical world around us. And we also see that in interactions. I mean, if we approach a potentially contentious situation with a positive attitude and concern and respect for the other individuals, we have a much greater tendency to have a positive, peaceful outcome to that. And by the same token, if someone is angry, upset, responding to that with kindness and love will tend to calm them down, whereas responding in kind only escalates. So those are just some examples in relationships and also in the real world. I'm working on the plant theory with my own gardening. You may remember back in the 70s, it was very cool, along with having a pet rock, to talk to your plants. And I'll never forget the look on my roommate's face when she came upon me talking soothingly to this plant that I was in the process of transplanting into its new home. But on a scientific level, that's been proven. When people think positively about a plant and others think negatively about it changes their growth. It's been done with rice. It's been done with double-blind experiments. So
you might know about some of these prayer studies where people are at a great distance. They're on different continents, and the people who are being prayed for heal in ways that the test group did not. So yeah, it doesn't even have to be a plant in the same room. You could probably do it for a plant in Australia and have an effect on it because of that fact that consciousness is not local. I love the research that Dean Radin has done out at in your state, up at IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Dean Radin has written some great books, Entangled Minds and The Conscious Universe, I think it's called, and Real Magic. He's done a lot of studies on the things you're talking about in terms of how consciousness affects the physical world. It's just really amazing stuff. And right here in Charlottesville, I also work with a group at the University of Virginia called the Division of Perceptual Studies. uvadops.org is their website. They research the nature of consciousness by looking at things like near-death experiences, what happens when we die, and if our, as you were pointing out, Joy, if our consciousness is not dependent on our brain, what is it? Who am I? So they look at near-death experiences. They look at kids that remember past lives, 3-year-old children that remember past lives. Some of you know Dr. Ian Stevenson started that work, but now Bruce Grayson and Jim Tucker and others are carrying it on. So science is really coming into its own on these quantum levels and doing the research, which I'm grateful for. Dr. Joe Dispenza, there's a lot of A.R.E. people who are into Dr. Joe right now. He's all about mind over matter. He healed himself. I was told he'd never walk again and used his mind to overcome his physical issues, let's say. So it's happening, people.
And Bruce Lipton is another one.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Bruce. Yeah.
And has actually, I think in his most recent book, addressed a lot of the topics that we covered today in terms of as we turn on our own genetics, so to speak, how do we do that on a world basis as well as
That's right. Yeah, Stephen Schwartz introduced me to him at the A.R.E. about 20 years ago. Bruce had just written his book, I think, Biology of Belief, I think it's called, something like that, and how our beliefs, our thoughts affect our physical body. And then, in fact, there's a study how pregnant, I think, it wasn't women, but pregnant, I think, rats were put into 2 different environments. One was a stressful environment. One was a environment where they were fed and comforted on a regular basis. And just in the course of those rats' pregnancy, the babies that they each had exhibited very different tendencies. The rats that were raised in a stressful environment came out with more muscled body and a smaller forebrain. The rats that were born into the sort of cushy environment had the larger forebrain, which is the more thoughtful, artistic, and the smaller body, less muscled body. So just in that one pregnancy, it wasn't just genetics. In other words, it was what was happening environmentally for those animals. The baby that was coming into this world knew, okay, it's tough out there. I better have more muscles. Or, oh, you know what? It's taken care of. I just need to be more thoughtful and kind. So I'm going to have a larger forebrain. That's why I've lost all my hair, Joy. I have a very large forebrain.
There's too much vibration going on under there.
yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Well, let's see. Do we have any other questions? Oh, looks like the last question, it says. But I don't see it. Oh, there it is. Pat, how can we know that our actions are right and good? Well, I think Joy touched on it too. I mean, I suppose technically you can't. But in my world, which is the Edgar Cayce worldview, intention is everything. If I come at an action with loving intention, in my case, you can't go wrong. Now, some people say, oh, you know, people have murdered people over love. Well, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about altruistic love. If I get involved wanting to help you from a loving place, even if the words don't come out quite right or something goes wrong, the fact that I'm coming from a loving intention makes our actions right or good. That's how I think Edgar Cayce would say it. Any lifetime he looked at where he said people advanced or did not advance, lost, it was all about what was their intention, what were they doing for others. What would you think, Joy?
I think that's brilliant. You know, I think we all have an urge to be good. And if we measure what we want to do against our ideal, we'll get the right direction. You know, we also have some urges to be not good. But you know, if we're really quiet and we think about that, we'll get the answer. We will get the answer.
Yeah, here.
When we do something not right, it's disturbing. You know, it is disturbing to us.
Yeah. You just made me think about Edgar Cayce's take on the Lord's Prayer. You probably know about this, but Cayce said that the Lord's Prayer is actually a key to opening the chakras. And the line that I really has been the most meaningful to me in Cayce's interpretation of that is that just a little phrase, on earth as it is in heaven, that things be done on earth as it is in heaven. And earth is the lower chakras and heaven is the upper chakras. So up here, I have these great intentions. I'm going to go out and be loving today. That's heaven, right? But then I get out into the earth and I meet these crabby people who are just jerks, and I I don't quite live on earth as in heaven, you see? So that's that constant, and of course it's the heart chakra that ties them all together. It's the balancing. So if we can come back to love, we can balance out earth and heaven. So there we go. Well, Joy, any last words to wrap up before we say goodbye to our people?
Just hope that you all can keep your prayers with you, say them, think about them, speak them out loud, and keep putting those positive scales or sand, little grains of sand on that scale. And thank you. We really appreciate you being willing to be with us tonight and to go through this process with us. We hope it stays with you. We hope it's helpful.
Hear, hear. Yes, go out and spread some love in the world. Live up to your ideal and know that you are loved. We are one. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Everybody. Thanks, Pat.
Bye-bye. You bet.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, hi, Judith. You have been part of the A.R.E. for many years, and you're currently the A.R.E.'s National Outreach Manager. And you also founded the A.R.E.'s Prison Outreach Program many years ago. So can you tell me a little bit about how you found out about the A.R.E. and Edgar Cayce, and what got you interested in working here?
All right. Well, someone, I don't remember who, gave me a copy of Tom Segru's wonderful biography. I have a picture of it right here. There is a River.
Yes.
And I read it, and I had the most unusual reaction, Loretto. I wept and wept and wept reading that book. I'd never had that kind of reaction before, and I wondered about it, but I didn't know what to make of it. And so, flash forward, 1968, I moved to Virginia Beach through a series of unusual circumstances. I find myself here, and I need a job. A friend of mine who was a fellow musician told me there was an opening at something called the A.R.E. So not even knowing what it was, I came up here and interviewed for a job as an administrative assistant in the press. Everett Irian was the personnel manager at the time. He interviewed me, and I had to type up an Edgar Cayce reading. That was my typing test. Well, as soon as I saw that, I made the connection with the book and this place. And I thought, all the time I was asking God for my next step and directions, he was bringing me here to the doorstep of the A.R.E. And 20 days later, I was working here. And what's interesting is I worked here for 17 years, was invited back for 4 or 5 more, have just been invited back for 3 or 4 more. And I am now sitting where you see me in the very spot I started in 1968, the exact same spot.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I feel as if I have come full circle for sure.
Yes.
And this has been a wonderful, life-changing event for me. I came to A.R.E. as a single parent, and I've used the readings to raise my son with wonderful results. We work with our dreams together, meditation and prayer, the castor oil packs, the medical aspects of the readings. I tried everything for myself. I did not want to take anything on anyone else's word. So when I went to my first staff meditation here at the A.R.E., I prayed, God, don't let anything weird happen to me. I'm not ready for it. And sure enough, nothing weird happened. I sat down in the room with people of all ages, races, sexes, long-haired hippies, little old ladies, men in business suits. It seemed as if everyone in the world could come in sit down, get quiet, and something important would happen in that room. I didn't have words for it then, but fortunately I literally ran into Gladys Davis Turner, Edgar Cayce's secretary.
Yes.
Both of us were picking up trash in the parking lot, and it was inevitable that we would meet in the middle. And she said, knowing I was new, Judith, are you in a study group yet? And I didn't even know what they were. And I said, no, ma'am. And she pointed across the street to the nurses' quarters and said, our Monday night group meets there every Monday night at 7:30. I want you to come. Well, I never missed a meeting unless I was traveling for the A.R.E. If it was Monday night, I was there with that study group. And I really just sort of fell in feet first. The good thing about this work, it's so universal. You don't have to really know what is going to happen. You just sort of go forward in faith, and what's supposed to happen happens. So in my case, I changed my diet. I began a practice of meditation. I began community service projects with my son, something that we'd always done. Starting the prison program was just a natural because I started reading these letters from inmates and no one was really answering them. So I began doing that. And then in 1972, when I was moved to the study group program, we incorporated the prison program. It was called Over the Wall then, into that study group program, which was perfect. And it's been there ever since, still going after all those years, and still sending free books to people in prison, still working with incarcerated men and women. And our A.R.E. members are actually mentors. They write to them. Yeah. So if I had to say what has helped me in this work, I would tell you that quite seriously, with physical conditions, I got rid of a wart that I had as a child my whole life using castor oil and baking soda from the readings with a Band-Aid for a couple of weeks. It just fell off, never came back. I was diagnosed with cyst on my uterus, and so ovaries rather, and I went to the readings, got the circulating filed on ovarian cyst, and did exactly what it said. And when I went back, they were gone. The castor oil packs dissolved the cyst. There was no trace of them. So even on small matters, my son knew better than to get sick. He was a very healthy child because he knew if he got sick, I would doctor him. But when I worked at another job, I once brought in, the secretary came limping in one morning. She had been out dancing the night before and she had twisted her ankle. So I got my castor oil and a pack out of my car, which I always carried, and we put the pack on her. She was up and walking later that day. She couldn't believe it. Of course, I took my glycothymoline in and other things.
I absolutely love that. One of the things I enjoy the most, just having worked with you is just, the study groups, you just bring so much knowledge and wisdom from back in the day. And you have been doing this for such a long time that you really get to have a sense of what was happening back then. You have all your little tidbits that you provide during the different study group meetings that I've been with you, where you just kind of bring us back to how it was back in the day. And I just think that's just so powerful. And I appreciate it because I know, you've been in this for a long time. And
well, I count it a great blessing that I was privileged to meet some of the people that I call the pioneers of the work. Hugh Lynn Cayce, Gladys Davis Turner, LCC Chris, people like that. They were just genuine, down-to-earth people. They didn't really wear their titles. They lived this work, and the dignity with which they did it and the integrity was what pulled me in, because I think we're all on the lookout for something that rings true to us. Yeah. This work rang true to me. When I saw it, something deep inside me recognized it at some soul level, and I knew I was being called back to do this.
Yes, that's how I feel.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like an innate, you just know it. It's just, you're supposed to be here for one reason or another.
Loretta, we have done this work before, and we are back to do it again and to do the best we know how.
Yeah.
I'm delighted. Thank you so much.
I have one last question.
Sure.
If you could have a conversation with Edgar Cayce, what would be one thing that you would tell him? Or that you would like to know?
Oh, there's so many things that we would all like to know. When we look at the readings, we wonder why people didn't ask, this, that, or the other. But if I could have a conversation with him, I would want to thank him. I'm going to get emotional about this, but I would want to thank him for being willing to lay down his life for others, because that is what he did. And look at the legacy of what he left us that we can still use and become better people from using today.
Yeah. Thank you, Judith. That was beautiful.
My pleasure.
I'm Jessica Newell, archivist for the Edgar Cayce Foundation. We're on the corner of 67th Street and Atlantic Avenue, looking at the front facade of the A.R.E. Library and Conference Center, also known as the A.R.E. Visitor Center. The building opened to the public in 1975, but the journey to build it started years earlier. In the early 1960s, it became apparent that the A.R.E. was running out of space in the Cayce Hospital building, which it had moved to fairly recently in 1956. The library's book collection had already outgrown the space, with hundreds of books now having to be stored in the basement. Staff offices were getting cramped despite the addition of the Wynn Press building to campus in 1962. The Cayce Hospital's structural integrity was in question. "The pipes are rotting in the walls," wrote Hewlin Cayce in a letter. Staff formed a building committee to look at their options. Levitt Associates of Norfolk submitted a proposal in 1966 for design made of circles and curvilinear shapes, covered in white stucco and plaster. According to the architects, quote, "By its plastic form, the design of the building suggests the flexibility that man must possess in his pursuit of enlightenment." The largest circle is reserved for the library. Offices and study rooms line the outer circumference, with the center a patio court surrounded by transparent glass. The architects wrote that the clarity of the structural form of the library suggests truthfulness. The meditation room is connected to the library with a helical wall symbolizing life. The architects located it next to the library so that it takes on a conscious and subconscious relationship with the very source of the energy through which we serve those who come seeking in this place. Entering the meditation room, the floor slopes gently upward. Moving further into the space, the ceiling also rises, reaching the seating area where the ceiling has doubled its original height. There are no windows but a shaft of light, sunlight by day, electric illumination at night, beaming down through a skylight at the center core. This light illuminates the curved wall of the meditation room in a graded manner, rather dimly at the entry, but more brightly toward the center of the room. As the visitor meditates, they will not see the light source, but only that it originates from somewhere above. Another interesting component of the design was a 10 to 15-story high-rise, just behind the proposed library, to house an adult education center for about 200 students and 20 to 25 faculty. It would not have been part of the original construction phase, but a future investment when needed. The A.R.E. approached the Spector, Peak & Howell architectural firm in 1971. Based in Falls Church, Virginia since the 1950s, SPH had designed municipal and government structures such as the Prince William County Library in 1971, Fort Hunt Elementary School in 1969, and underground storage structures for Nike and Hercules missiles. A.R.E. approved the final plan for the Library Conference Center in 1972. It is a concrete and steel structure designed in the Brutalist style. Brutalism was an architectural movement developing in Europe after the Second World War. Buildings in this structure are characterized by basic geometric forms, showcasing the construction material's natural finishes without any extraneous decoration. Brutalism, its name derived from the French term for raw concrete, béton brut, became popular during the rebuilding of the cities of Europe that had been heavily bombed during the war. Notable examples include Unité d'Habitation, designed by the architect Le Corbusier in 1949 for the city of Marseille, and Boston City Hall, designed by Gerhard Kallman and Michael McKinnell in 1962. Construction on the library began in 1973. The structure's steel beams were fabricated in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The distinctive angled base of the building was constructed using interlocking slabs of concrete, stabilized with earth from the site. The concrete exterior is covered with a fine stone finish of small pebbles to blend in with the sands of the beach across the street. The bronze metals surrounding the windows and the coating on the window panes are designed to withstand the sea air. In a letter to an A.R.E. member, Edgar Cayce described the symbolism of the design in this way. The square structure is representative of man and the earth, materiality, where we are right now. There's a meditation penthouse on top, symbolizing man's spiritual aspirations. A meditation garden will overlook the Atlantic, and you know the symbology of the garden and water. There are 7 steps leading to the entrance. The solidity of the building represents the permanence and security of the knowledge contained in the readings. Gladys Davis and Robert Adrians chose the text for the lintel above the front entrance, that we may make manifest the love of God and man. A.R.E. staff and the local community dedicated the completed Library Conference Center on Sunday, March 30th, 1975. Entering the front doors, we see the bookstore on the right and the auditorium straight ahead. There's both a main auditorium for events as well as a mini auditorium to host smaller audiences. There are long horizontal windows along the top edges of the walls in these rooms to let in sunlight as well as providing a glare-free environment for projected presentations. Moving up the center staircase, we see the large bronze chandelier designed and built for the space by George Loxo. Loxo was a Finnish-American sculptor who started exhibiting his work professionally in 1955. According to a review in the Norfolk Ledger-Star, he was represented by the Studio Gallery in Virginia Beach and the President Chrysler Museum in Norfolk. Loxo was adept at carving in wood and stone, metal casting, aluminum and bronze, and he also created welded sculptural pieces like this chandelier. To the right of the double doors leading to the second floor stands a sculpture by Funchen Lord. Born in St. Louis in 1911, Lord graduated from Radcliffe College and Washington University in St. Louis. She painted more than 270 abstract expressionist, op art, and minimalist pieces, and also worked in folded metal to create paintings and sculptures, like this piece, which was donated to the A.R.E. by her husband William Lord after her passing in 1993. A member of the Florida Artists Group and the Royal Society of Arts, she described her work as the secret inner life of the personality, confronted by the conflictual nature of living and by the vast area of the unconscious mind. Her pieces represent psychic wholeness and are extensions of the self expressed in energy. Immediately in front of us hangs the Edgar Cayce Aura chart, painted by Ingo Swann from 1967 to 1969 and donated to the A.R.E. by the artist estate. Swann was known for research on psychic and remote viewing phenomena. This painting is based on Edgar Cayce's past lifetimes, visually described in a series of psychic readings. Swann described the piece as the nucleus of a transpersonal art form. Miriam Sommerberg carved Reincarnation in 1949 and donated it to the A.R.E. in 1980. A sculptor who also worked in oils, watercolors, and woodcut prints, she attended the Bauhaus in 1926 and fled Germany with her 5 children during the Second World War. They made it through Italy to Naples, where they joined 976 other refugees on board the USS Henry Gibbons en route to a shelter at Port Ontario, New York. Sommerberg continued her successful work as an artist and exhibited internationally throughout her career. She wrote in the journal Design in 1950 that, quote, "Art doesn't belong on a pedestal. It belongs to the ordinary people and should be treated honestly." Let's make our way up to the 3rd floor to the meditation penthouse, as the architects called it. A curved entrance hall, reminiscent of that 1966 design by Levitt & Associates, leads into a wide rectangular room oriented toward an enormous window, with an incredible view of the Atlantic Ocean. The patio is inaccessible now, but original plans described a rooftop garden and a geometric open roof above. Frederica Fields designed and constructed the stained glass windows throughout the meditation floor. Born in Philadelphia in 1912, she attended Wellesley College and became an abstract stained glass artist. Some of her pieces are preserved at the Corning Museum of Glass in Corning, New York. In an A.R.E. News interview in 1977, Fields described her work like this: "Forget the look of leaded lights in a Gothic church. Think no more of figure or story rendered in flat pictorial glass. Free the mind from the traditional stained glass techniques and all thought of modern plastic involvements. We are dealing with an abstract construction in pure glass, truly three-dimensional, involving color, which represents a new visual experience. Light journeys through the layers and intermingling shapes, retaining the purity of color and the sparkle inherent in the glass itself. The source of illumination is fractured and dispersed so that the work is alive throughout. Behind the building grows the meditation garden. The garden was part of the original 1975 campus design, with small ponds and plentiful seating throughout the foliage. The plantings were restored and updated in 1994. The garden serves as a haven and gathering place for staff and visitors, as well as a wedding venue. The A.R.E. Library and Conference Center is a unique example of modernist architecture amidst the more traditional architectural styles of the Virginia Beach oceanfront, reflecting both the era in which it was built and the organization that calls it home.
And when the morning stars sang together, and the whispering winds brought the news of the coming of man's indwelling, of the Spirit of the Creator, became the living soul. This entity came into being.
He has been called the sleeping prophet and the greatest psychic of all time. From holistic health to predictions about our future, the Cayce material covers all aspects of life. Hundreds of books have explored his amazing talent. Are you looking for a new direction or answers to life's many questions? Find out how the Edgar Cayce information can help you with a better understanding of the body-mind-spirit connection, the oneness of God, and the meaning of life.
Hello, I'm John Van Auken, one of the directors here at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, the A.R.E. Have you ever wondered whether there is more to life? Do you know your soul's unique purpose and reason for being on the earth at this time? Our organization was founded in 1931 to help answer these very questions and to help individuals like you discover a depth that adds meaning to your life.
Edgar Cayce has been called the sleeping prophet and the father of holistic medicine. As a child, he was able to memorize the pages of a book simply by sleeping on it. For more than 40 years, Cayce gave psychic readings to thousands of people while in an unconscious state, diagnosing illnesses and revealing details of their past and future. Many of his readings dealt with holistic health and the treatment of illnesses. He started the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment, or A.R.E., in Virginia Beach because he noticed his gift worked best near large bodies of water. Although Virginia Beach was just a small fishing town then, Cayce had a vision it would become a huge tourist attraction, and Norfolk would boast one of the largest shipyards and ports in the country. We now go to this center, which acts as the international headquarters of the A.R.E.
Edgar Cayce's dream was to be of help to people. Lots of times people in life, they get overwhelmed with their life, their relationships, with their job, and sometimes they have the thought, isn't there more to life than this? And I think Edgar Cayce would suggest that in fact there is, that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. Edgar Cayce is the most documented psychic of all time. He lived between 1877 and 1945. For 43 years of his adult life, somehow he was able to put himself to sleep, close his eyes, and while asleep, he could be asked virtually any question imaginable. The name Edgar Cayce sometimes is much more prominent and famous throughout the world than it is here in Virginia Beach. I have been on planes all over the world. We have Edgar Cayce centers in 38 countries. We do programs around the world, and very often on a plane they'll say, "Where are you from?" I'll say, "Virginia Beach." "Oh, Edgar Cayce." Sometimes there's kind of like a misperception. Well, what's it all about? Is it some kind of a ghost researchers? Is it some kind of a religious movement? No, I usually tell people the best way to describe us is really as a self-help organization. Edgar Cayce provided a wealth of information for individuals, just like you and I, how we could maintain a better lifestyle, how we can take better care of our physical bodies, how we can learn to deal with our attitudes and emotions, how we can help transform our relationships. So the questions you have about your life are just like questions that people asked Edgar Cayce 70, 80, 90 years ago. And the answers to those questions came to be called readings. And they found that Edgar Cayce had an incredible accuracy rate. He could put himself to sleep here in Virginia Beach, tune into an individual virtually anywhere in the world, diagnose what was wrong with that person, how they had gotten ill to begin with, even sometimes recommend doctors for them to go to. And over the years, we kept track of all of Edgar Cayce's readings, his correspondence with people who had readings, and in fact, the Edgar Cayce database contains approximately 24 million words. And for that reason, Cayce has been called the most documented psychic of all time. Edgar Cayce was a Christian. He was a member of Protestant churches all his life. He taught Sunday school all his life. So at first, when some of this information started coming through him, he thought it was unusual. The ability to go to sleep and see another person at a distance, or the ability to put himself into a trance and answer questions about other different religions or history or whatever it might be. His reading of the Bible, where he saw the Old and New Testaments were filled with visions and dreams and people having experiences in consciousness, that gave him a tremendous sense of well-being, that somehow because of his tremendous faith he was able to do these things. The first publicity was really the New York Times in 1910. They ran a full-page spread about the illiterate man who became a doctor when hypnotized. He wasn't illiterate, but that was a better headline. But it was an amazing ability to somehow tune into someone at a distance. I would say that for many years he had essentially 2 readings a day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And it wasn't really until 1942 when his biography, There Is a River, came out. It was really his life story. And people bought that book and became very interested. And then the following year, 1943, Coronet magazine published an article called The Miracle Man of Virginia Beach. And Coronet was really the life magazine of its day. And because of those 2 publications, the requests for reading became so frequent that Edgar Cayce told his secretary to book in advance in order to stay kept up with the demand. He was really worried about all these people. The postman was apparently delivering bags of mail each day. Eventually, Edgar Cayce wore himself out and had a stroke. And when he died, he had been booked 8 readings a day, 2 years in advance. So truly toward the end of his life, people realized that his gift was remarkable, and so many people wanted help. Edgar Cayce founded the A.R.E. in 1931, really as a membership/research organization where people could come and see what this material was all about. For example, I first became interested in A.R.E. because I had some really challenging problems with allergies. I used to get 6 allergy shots a week. Now, by working with the Cayce information on allergies, I don't even take pills anymore. It was also his desire where people would come and they would be able to get readings, and he would have a team of doctors, nurses, physiotherapists carrying out the treatment. Holistic health from Cayce's perspective is an approach to health that incorporates the whole person, the body, the mind, the emotions, and the spiritual beliefs of that individual. And so when Edgar Cayce gave a reading, a health reading, and we have copies of approximately 9,000 health readings, he would try to provide information and insight that would help that person on every level. He did not just draw upon alternatives to medicine. He drew upon every kind of medicine known to humankind. He recommends surgery, he recommends osteopathic adjustments, chiropractic adjustments, naturopathy, physical therapy, dietary changes. Anything that you can imagine was recommended by the Cayce material. And in fact, a group of physicians who became interested in holism because of the Edgar Cayce material really were the ones responsible for founding the American Holistic Medical Association in 1978. And today, the old Edgar Cayce Hospital has been transformed into our health center and spa. So people come here for massage, they come here for chiropractic adjustment, they come here for dietary advice, they come here for regression therapy. So in a sense, we are continuing Cayce's health tradition even today. We have a Cayce Riley School of Massage that trains people in massage therapy. I believe we've graduated about 2,100 different students from 18 different countries. If people have never been here and are hesitant to visit because they might think it might be unusual, we're just like a visitor center. You can walk in, you can explore the bookstore, you can go through the labyrinth, you can walk through our meditation gardens. It's a very open, wonderful place to visit. Tours come here all the time, and I think if you haven't been here before, you will really enjoy coming to visit Edgar Cayce's A.R.E.
Visit edgarcayce.org for more information and to gain access to resources on how to treat hundreds of ailments from acne to varicose veins.
Latent within you are talents, ancient wisdom, and all the answers to reaching your soul's full potential in this lifetime. For nearly 100 years, America's most amazing seer, Edgar Cayce, and the organization that grew from those early beginnings has been providing tools for personal empowerment and spiritual growth to its members. As members, you can explore issues of body, mind, and spirit within a community of like-minded people. Quarterly, we publish a mystery-revealing magazine titled Venture Inward. Members also have access to an exclusive online membership section with all 14,306 Edgar Cayce readings in a searchable database, plus background material such as letters, historical documents, and more. Plus, you'll enjoy hours of audio and video materials, including recent events from Virginia Beach and special selections from the archives. We also maintain an extensive health database, online dream interpretation, and a free meditation course. Next, you're going to hear about the benefits from our members in their own words.
I grew up with a very religious, very strong religious foundation through my family, which is one of the many reasons that my spirituality has always been so important to me. It's also one of the reasons I was so thrilled to find out about the A.R.E. and Edgar Cayce's work. And my favorite part about being a member is the fact that I have access to all of those readings and any other spiritual material I could think of online.
I became a member of A.R.E. because the information that came through Edgar Cayce has changed my life, and it has helped me so much in my own personal struggles that I wanted to give something back, and I became a life member 2 years ago. Definitely, even just the stories of feeling alone are worth investigating this information further.
I do use the members-only parts of the website. I use them for, in particular, health issues, the Edgar Cayce readings, and I like to look at Venture Inward magazine on the website. The information given has helped my spiritual path and spiritual growth.
And I could identify with Edgar Cayce more in his human element. I'm always interested in the human element because I'm so human myself that it gave me hope that I too could transform myself. I would share that if you are interested in looking at this video, that you pursue it more yourself and make up your own mind.
I would say for them to really read into his material and really read about who Edgar Cayce was as a person. Because if you read about his history and the type of person that he was, it's really hard not to want to be a part of such a positive movement. I always had the philosophy that each and every one of us, as we have a soul, has some kind of psychic ability, and it's why when we form close bonds with each other, we're able to kind of pick up on emotions and that kind of stuff. So I was really excited to learn about how I could better develop my psychic ability through the Edgar Cayce readings and the work, and be able to incorporate that into my spirituality also.
Applying this information in your life, you will gain an insight into your soul's purpose and its full potential.
Visit edgarcayce.org.
He has been called the sleeping prophet, a man of miracles, a seer, a mystic. His work is known around the globe. Hundreds of books have explored his amazing psychic gift. From medical diagnoses to predicting social change, Edgar Cayce's legacy has touched the lives of millions. For 43 years of his adult life, Edgar Cayce gave psychic readings on more than 10,000 different subjects. Nearly everything imaginable is explored in his material: healing, business advice, the Bible, education, child-rearing, ancient civilizations, spirituality, prophecy of world events, and much more.
He looked like a country doctor, a simple person. You wouldn't turn around the street if you saw him. But once you spoke to him, his voice was soft, it was direct, it was honest, it was embracing. And for me, I always saw a double pupil, a superimposure, as if he were looking through eternity. It made you a little uncomfortable at times because you wondered what you had done yesterday or said yesterday that you ought not to have said.
You know, growing up as a teenager with a psychic father is pretty rough. My father was an unusually creative person. He was a fine photographer and was noted for his pictures, especially those of children. Edgar Cayce was an inventor of games. He loved to play all kinds of games and invented one called Pit, which is still on the market. He was a fine bowler. I never won a bowling game from him. He was a lousy golfer, but he loved to play. He was a great fisherman and fished everywhere that he had an opportunity. He was a man who loved to cook and did all kinds of things with preserves and berries of various kinds. He was a great gardener and loved to have exotic trees of all kinds around him. He was a man who was a fine Sunday school teacher, and he always had the largest classes in any church that he worked in.
Most of the people he never saw, many of them didn't even acknowledge the reading or pay for them. But if he was asked, he would give. I don't know what I would have done or where I would be without it.
I thought everybody's father gave readings. Didn't want a doctor, I wanted one of Dad's readings. I think he felt that he had the ability to help people, and that's what he wanted to do.
I often heard him say, do you suppose this is ever going to amount to anything?
The Cayce legacy presents a body of information so valuable that Edgar Cayce himself might have hesitated to predict their impact on contemporary society. 60 years ago, who could have known that one day terms such as meditation, auras, spiritual growth, reincarnation, and holism would become household words to millions? Cayce's organization, the Association for Research and Enlightenment Incorporated, A.R.E., has grown from its humble beginnings to an association with Edgar Cayce centers in countries around the world. Today, A.R.E. consists of hundreds of educational activities and outreach programs, a children's camp, a multi-million-dollar publishing company, massage and health services, an historical foundation, and an affiliated university. For decades, the Cayce readings have stood the test of time, research, and extensive study. Just who was this man? A farmer boy who would become the most documented psychic of all time.
Later in life, Cayce would find that he had the ability to put himself into a sleep-like state by lying down on a couch, closing his eyes, and folding his hands over his stomach. In this state of relaxation and meditation, he was able to place his mind in contact with all time and space, the universal consciousness. From there, he could respond to questions as broad as, what are the secrets of the universe, and what is my purpose in life, to as specific as, what can I do to help my arthritis, and how were the pyramids of Egypt built? His responses to these questions came to be called the readings, and their insights offer practical help and advice to individuals even today. Many people are surprised to learn that Edgar Cayce was a devoted churchgoer and Sunday school teacher. At a young age, Cayce vowed to read the Bible for every year of his life, and at the time of his death in 1945, he had accomplished this task. Perhaps the reading said it best when asked how to become psychic. Cayce's advice was to become more spiritual.